just thinking a little bit about the complicated minefield we have to navigate through. There's no mistake about it. This is not a picnic. It is spiritual warfare, but we're contending for truth because truth sets people free, And there are people that are saved by grace, but struggle with a weak conscience and are weak in the faith that we receive, but not to doubtful disputations. They're not enemies of the truth. They're just struggling to lay hold of this. And that, Christ is the one who measures how much people grow. We can't turn it into works. We can't measure people by their growth. We just say, is that my brother? Is that my sister? Is he saved by grace? Does he have the testimony? Yes. And then by their mouth, by what they say, we can determine, kind of where they are. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And the more we grow in the Christian life, the more our mouth will speak of Christ. But the problem is that babes, when we're babes in Christ, and all of us have been there, we can only receive milk, which means we can't understand the things of the Spirit. And Paul had to kind of withhold certain truths from the Corinthians, because he said, well, you're walking carnally like babes. I can only give you milk. We do speak of wisdom among those who are mature, even the hidden wisdom, right? Which God preordained to our glory, which is the mystery of Christ. And then he spends the rest of the letter introducing them to the mystery of Christ as the solution to all their problems. So it's not that he withheld it from them like it's some kind of secret. It's that they couldn't receive it. But even though he said, I couldn't speak to you like this, he then proceeded to speak to them like that. So we just keep having to speak forth the mystery of Christ, realizing that some won't get it. And if they don't get it, they're going to fight against it. But that doesn't mean that they're not brothers and sisters if they have the testimony. So then how do we know the difference between that and an enemy of the truth? Well, an enemy of the truth, what I've found, is that they'll end up lying and slandering. The ones where it started out as contending for the truth, and then turned into an argument. Well, then I watched them harden, and then I watched them team up with other wolves and launch campaigns of slander and accusation that were full of lies and no longer true. So it was no longer just opposition to the truth because they couldn't grasp spiritual things. They made themselves an enemy of the truth and opposed those who preached it. That's different. And still, if they were just commenters on walls, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But it's when they have channels with thousands of subscribers that it becomes a big deal. Because teachers are held to a stricter account. So there we do have to discern between a brother or sister who's just struggling to grow and doesn't understand the things we're talking about, and they may get mad for a while, but the Lord is their shepherd and he'll bring them through. And they may not come back to us, but the Lord will take care of them. And we just acknowledge that, But then there's those that harden themselves where they're clearly ravenous wolves. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference because both seem to be in opposition. Both are angry. Both are offended. And both seem to really be upset at what you're saying. Well, the wolf eventually starts to array themselves against you, and no matter where you turn, there they are. And they start picking off other sheep, and they start turning people. You find more and more people in their camp, so to speak, that are and their walls are filled with slander and accusations. And you realize that there is a gathering mob, That is where you've got some wolves. And then, in addition to the fact that they don't speak Christ, the abundance of their heart is not Christ, it's whatever. And then eventually, most of those end up backloading works and preaching a corrupt or a accursed gospel, eventually. And so then you have to mark and avoid by instruction, And in the meanwhile, we don't always know who the person is that's just trying to grow in the truth and having an honest pursuit, and those who are going to really harden and weren't of us in the first place until it's manifest. So during those times, all you can do is wait and watch and see and keep teaching, keep speaking the mystery of Christ, keep contending for the truth, no matter what the accusations are. There's so many people out there that think that, he's arrogant, he doesn't know how to walk in love, and he doesn't know how to walk in the Spirit, and he's unclean, and he has blah, 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 and it just goes on and on and on. All I can do is stay at my post. Most of those people got offended at some point along the way, and I tried to help them in some way, or we did, or somebody did, and they got offended. Okay? We didn't bring the fight to anyone. We're just standing at our post, sounding the trumpet and saying, this is the way, this is the mystery of Christ, this is what we're here for. And it is opposed from every corner. It's opposed by the natural man who is reconciled to God. It's opposed from the enemies of the truth. It's opposed from wolves. It's opposed from people who don't understand, But then it's received by those who are growing in the truth. And there's no difference between us and those who are genuinely seeking the truth but don't understand and are resisting it, because I used to resist the same kind of truth. The difference is when your resistance becomes sin, and you start to slander and accuse the brethren. Then before you know it, people start getting so-called prophetic words and insights and impressions and all that stuff, and now you're dealing with other spirits too on top of it all. There are enemies of the truth, and that's one of the reasons why the environment is so difficult. I would love to have a private channel where it was just the subs, but these are not, the subs are not my subs. We have a community of people that eat from different, pastures. All we can do is set up our shop and speak what we know. And then the sheep have to discern their shepherd's voice in the midst of a sea of voices, and we're aware of that. We don't have a monopoly on it. It's not our church. All we can do is speak what we know, and then take the accusations as they come. Try not to offend ourselves. Try not to get in the flesh. Try not to respond in the flesh. Good luck with that. And keep pursuing the truth and keep speaking the truth. And trusting ourselves to the Lord and saying, I don't have a righteousness apart from Him. He is my righteousness. And that's what I want people to see anyway. So, it's just it's difficult, especially at the turn of this year. Well, really since about November last year, things got to really, obviously, everybody knows there's division and all that stuff. And there must be division. These things have to fall out this way, because it is the harvest that manifests everybody for what they are. What we really are is going to be manifested out of the abundance of our heart. What it is we speak is going to signal who we are. And there's no way around it, It's just gonna be, and so we need to accept it. Meanwhile, try to help the ones we can. Try to keep the door open as much as possible. But if I see someone starting to show signs of a wolf, then I have to shut it down. Or I'm not saying that's happening right now. I'm saying, what is the difference between these conversations? Because they can get pretty upsetting and messy. That doesn't mean you're dealing with a wolf. You're dealing with brothers and sisters who are working out their salvation and trying to figure things out. And we're all at different places in our growth, That is different. There can be even much contention. There was contention between Israel, the Jews in Acts 15 and Paul. It was a genuine, honest thing that needed to be worked out in the midst of much contention. That is okay. Contention is not a problem for God, okay? If it's leading us to discussions that bring the truth out even more clearly. What's a problem for God is when someone is pretending to be nice, but in the background they're a wolf. They're turning people against people and whispering and lying and slandering, and tearing down. And the Lord sees all that stuff, And then when we see someone who clearly has a false gospel and is bringing people into bondage while attacking channels, we know who those people are. You got to mark and avoid. You can't consider that the same thing as a brother who's struggling or a sister who's struggling. That is an enemy of the truth. And then you have to deliver them over to the Lord, and only the Lord can deal with them. You don't deal with Alexander the coppersmith and Hymenaeus the same way you do with a new believer who's just struggling to learn how this thing works and has a lot of natural concepts. But with the natural concepts, somebody's got to teach to it. A lot of times people will say, well, why don't you just let the Holy Spirit teach? Why do you have to be so, strong? Well, because we live in this lukewarm mix of everybody's concept, and everybody's wrong, So Christ must be proclaimed with much contention and boldness, not with words of flattery, not for the sake of gaining prestige, but even being willing to lose your reputation to preach him. We have to. Otherwise, no one knows. If you have the truth, you must speak it loudly. And it's going to meet opposition, and that's going to produce division, but that's okay. God is not embarrassed. We got to keep our eyes off the outward realm and see what it is that Christ is doing and how he's doing it. All right, take it easy.